Get your hands on stylish t-shirts, hoodies, and more at wearbuff.com. That's WEARBUF.com. And make sure to use the promo code TWB at checkout for 20% off your first order. Stay Buffalo proud with Wear Buff.
The Buffalo Bills win streak ends, dropping a game to the Los Angeles Rams 44-42. This week on the Wandering Buffalo podcast.
You're now listening to the Wandering Buffalo podcast with your host, Justin Goddard.
Bills Mafia, welcome into another episode of the Wandering Buffalo podcast, a show on the Buffalo FamBase podcast network. My name is Justin. I am your host today, and from the top here, just want to apologize. We're a little bit late on this week's episode. Many of you may know that I am in school full-time as well as working. This week was finals week, so had to shuffle the deck a little bit with my regular recordings times, studying, actually taking the finals. But hey, semester's over, so I'm sure there'll be some other interruptions in the future, but it won't be school, at least for a little bit. This week we're talking about the Buffalo Bills dropping a game to the Los Angeles Rams in what was a pretty wild shootout and a pretty disappointing loss. There's a lot to unpack in this game, and at this point in the week, it's kind of the Bills world is moving on to Detroit, so I don't want to hang on to too many of the storylines of this game that you've probably already heard in several different places, and I just kind of want to look at what this game means to me and kind of like both the positive and the negative aspects of it. And right off the top, we got to talk about Josh Allen. Just an absolutely incredible superhero performance. And there were spots in this game where the offense was a little bit, I don't even want to say in a lull, because we've seen that in the past, and it, stretches over quarters and halves. There's just like some and really standard down points. Like the team punted a few times. That's a regular football game, right? But in this shootout atmosphere, when you look at what Josh Allen ends up with, it's hard to believe that there's even like punting scenarios. So he accounts for 420 something yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks, and just a superhero performance from him. And a game that, if you care a lot about the NFL awards, winning winning a game that looks like this would pretty much, that's one of those games that like cements your vote as an MVP candidate. Unfortunately, the whole criteria for MVP voting is just arbitrary and terrible. Um, if you can sit here with a straight face and tell me that nowhere over the past 5 years that Josh Allen was the MVP, that kind of lost me on the MVP award. So it's not something that I'm horribly concerned with, but I'm sure Josh Allen is. And this is one of those games that can really make an impact towards that. Of course, it goes a lot further to win the game. So there's a few things here, and the first thing is it was nice to see this game from Allen despite it being in a loss. And when I say that, it's kind of with the mindset of, my favorite thing about this season this far is that we haven't seen a lot of Josh Allen being a hero, and it's because he hasn't had to be. He's played within the offense. He's made smart decisions with the ball. He's not, chasing the long balls. He's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He's getting it into the playmaker's hands. They're creating after the catch. it's great to see. What was also great to see is when everything isn't working out perfectly and they need those hero plays and they need Josh Allen to be Josh Allen. He did it. There's no hesitation. Slapped on the cape, and we saw some incredible play from Josh Allen. So that's the first thing. The rest of the game kind of moves towards, we're at the time of the year where we start to really know who teams are. We start to see what playoff matchups might be. We know which teams in the league are legit and kind of start figuring out who the paper tigers are, right? And my biggest issue with this game is it felt like some of the playoff losses, and in particular, this felt like the 13 seconds game where Josh Allen, the offense did, everything in their power. Scoring 40 something points in the NFL, if you're paying attention, doesn't happen very often. Having a shootout of this caliber doesn't happen very often. And this game just made me think of the 13 seconds game where it was like, how much can he do before the defense just gives him one? Because I'm not even talking a turnover. I'm talking just forcing a punt. And I think there's only one time the defense forced them to punt in like a meaningful big stop situation. And when I invoke 13 seconds here, just based off of a lot of the stuff I've seen on social media and all that, it fires up the McDermott will never get us over the hump crowd again. And the dichotomy of week to week, and I'm not saying it's the same people, I'm not saying it's people flip-flopping or whatever. It's just everything I see out there of like this high of last week, the Bills boat racing a team, and McDermott's doing snow angels after the game, and how much fun it is, and feeling like a team of destiny. And then we lose a really tight, high-scoring game the following week, and I'm seeing the Fire McDermott crowd fired up again. And I'll say this: I've been critical of McDermott in the past, in particular last year as we were, coming out of the bye at like 6-6, and it just really felt like we were underachieving with the team that we had assembled. And then we all know how the rest of that season went. And my thing with this is McDermott's a human being. He's not a perfect coach. He's going to make mistakes, all that. We can say that there's mistakes that he should have learned from by now and, never messed up again. Some of the stuff in this game, I feel like is just kind of headhunting for an easy answer. Did I love the timeout at the goal line? No. I don't have a problem with the play call. You're at the 1 yard line. You run the quarterback sneak with Allen. He's playing with his hair on absolute fire, and he gets stopped short. But for me, I would have taken, the 10, 12 seconds, whatever it is, to reset and just run that play again. I probably would have gone into the huddle with that plan in place for the offense. Hey, if we don't get in, we're just going to do it again. And, it's easy in hindsight, right? Because you try it again and you don't get in again. Now you have a whole nother barrel of monkeys open up. But, I mean, the way I see some people talking about the decision to take the timeout is like that's a fireable offense. And I've really been trying to, especially over the last few weeks, just really emphasize my want and my commitment to just like enjoying the Bills being good, and just kind of reflecting on almost 2 decades of not even making the playoffs, and we sat there and we weathered the storm and we still loved and supported this team. And we finally have a good team, and sometimes we don't know how to act and just appreciate it. Like we're coming off of, clinching the division by by December 1st. We got 5 games left and we've already clinched the division. We're in the conversation for the 1 seed, if not the 2 seed. There it's far from controlling our own destiny on either situation. But mind you, this was all in what was supposed to be a retool, recalibrate year, and the Bills sit at 10-3. Division's locked up earlier than we've ever done it. I'm enjoying this. Now, do I have concerns headed into the playoffs after a game like this? Sure, absolutely. And in particular, when your next opponent is the Detroit Lions, who, I mean, for what it's worth, it's basically the Rams team on steroids. And I don't want to go through this whole show and not, give credit to the Rams. I think I think it's easy to look at the Rams record and be like, "Oh, they were 6-6. Like, how do we lose this game?" And kind of ignore the fact that this team was in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They have what will be a Hall of Fame quarterback in Stafford, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, 2 of the best receivers in the league. They have an effective run game. Like, not making excuses here. The defense was terrible. They weren't good enough. But it's not like they were playing a bunch of slouches either. And I think this was kind of the perfect storm of the Bills were riding high off of this, really fun division clinching game, going across the whole country to play a team that is desperate and scratching and clawing to try to get a playoff spot of their own. They're finally healthy. And you pair all that up with Matt Stafford was playing unconscious like that. He played an unbelievable football game. What concerns me as we look towards Detroit and further down the road, the playoffs, is this game kind of presented all the familiar themes of our bad playoff losses. And it was we run into an elite level quarterback. Our defensive line can't sniff them the whole game. We let the other team control the game script, so we're not able to really pin our ears back and rush the passer on passing downs. They can still sprinkle in the run game and have it be effective. And all of a sudden, we're no longer a bend but don't break defense. We're just getting ran through, and our offense has no margin of error to work with throughout the game, and they have to be the one to score last. And in this Rams game, we're also haven't even talked yet about, having a blocked punt for a touchdown. And, it's hard to extend any criticism to Josh Allen in a game like this. Right before that blocked punt, he has Matt Collins, and they just barely miss on the connection. And, it leads to a punt, which basically turns out to be a 14-point swing. And a game like this that could be all the difference. So, yes, there's some things that I'm concerned about here. Again, it's the same things that have been presenting themselves in the playoffs that end up being our demise. And it ends up being, you get this all-world performance from Josh Allen and the offense, and you can't get those couple stops on defense when it matters most. And it's hard to take that kind of loss this far into the season and not think about it translating to the playoffs. So for me, I'm not on the sky is falling train just yet. I think we have a really tough matchup coming up against Detroit. I think right now Detroit is the best team in the NFL and the Bills are the second team in the NFL. And I think Detroit is clearing most teams in a pretty healthy way, and that's with them overcoming injuries as well. I do want to keep the context in mind that the Bills are having a very productive, efficient winning season. We had the 2 losses earlier in the year, rattled off 7 straight, and then we dropped 1 to the Rams. And I just think there's so much that factors into that I'm not all of a sudden going to write this team off out of nowhere because they lost to the Rams. And even if they dropped 1 to Detroit, I mean, we're still talking about having won the division. We're going to have a home playoff game. And doing all of this in a year where, if you look at national media, most of the people had us finishing 3rd or 4th in this division. And like I said, wrapped it up by December 1st with 5 games left in the season. I don't think taking a loss like this at this juncture in the season is the worst thing in the world. I think getting a nice gut punch, heat check, while you still have some time in the regular season to retool things. You got a lot of good film on. There's a lot of good film put out there on how the Rams were able to dissect our defense, and that goes for the Bills as well. They have all the same film on what they need to clean up because they know other teams are going to be looking at that film and trying to exploit the same things. I think I would much rather have this type of loss right now than go into the playoffs on an 11-game winning streak and somehow get the 1 seed and feel good coming off the bye and have this game happen. So I think there is some benefit to being punched in the mouth like this at this point in the season. And, the I think part of watching football is we forget so quickly that these guys on the field, these coaches, are all humans with human emotions, and they're professional athletes, and we act like they're perfect human beings, super beings, whatever. And I can look at it as something as simple as we see Sean McDermott always as this serious, super buttoned up guy. You never get, real emotions from him. You don't see him get too high, you don't see him get too low. He's just he's just Sean McDermott, right? And the previous game we see him at the end of the game doing snow angels, right? And I love that. It's great to see Sean McDermott let his hair down, as it were. I know he's not letting any hair down, but when you're playing this grueling of a schedule, and like I talked about, you're going out west to take on an opponent that's playing desperate, and you have this super loose vibe. Maybe it's as simple as Sean McDermott had a little bit too much fun with the last win, and the team responded accordingly, and they were riding a little bit too high and got a little bit too loose and weren't completely ready for this Rams team. I don't know. It's, to me, like I said, I can't get to the sky is falling after 1 game. There is a ton to be cleaned up on this. I do have concerns going forward. But it's also, like I said, this goes up there, you know, 5-6 years in a row. Talking about one of the best football teams that I've ever watched play as a Bills fan. And I'm not saying that this is the most talented roster that we've had with Josh Allen. I'm not saying like this is the team that should win it all. But my stance all along has been, as long as you have Josh Allen, you have a chance. And I think this year is your evidence of that. Of, you know, in the offseason, you say goodbye to your number one and your number two receiver. You have massive dead cap implications, losing Stephon Diggs. You retool, you end up bringing in Amari Cooper, and you have an offense that is still down Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid. Go out there, and Josh Allen's able to throw for almost 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's able to put on the cape and run another 80 yards for another 3 touchdowns. It just, to me, this game is kind of indicative of how hard it is to win in the NFL and how any team can really win any week. And it was nice seeing this performance from Allen despite it coming in a loss, because we may get to the playoffs and need that. Now, you hope that if you need this performance from Allen in the playoffs, that you don't allow a block punt for a touchdown, that your defense can get a couple more meaningful stops. And I think that's, McDermott and the coaching staff are going to go crazy on film this week. They're going to try to fix all those mistakes, because that was just put on film, a masterclass on how to beat the Bills defense by the Rams. And we're also coming out of this game. Rasul Douglas got banged up. We'll see what happens there. But circle back to kind of where I started this conversation, was seeing the Fire Sean McDermott crowd firing back up. And again, I don't know if McDermott is the guy that will get the Bills over the hump with Josh Allen. What I do know is that he's a good coach in the NFL that has led this team to a lot of success. I know that he was able to take a team that we all thought was tanking, selling off pieces left and right, and backdoor their way into the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor as a quarterback. I know that there's going to be 6, 7, 8 teams this year that fire their coach, and they're looking for the next guy because they've hired somebody that they thought was the next guy, and they're still looking. If I could do a 1-for-1 swap, and I could bring in Andy Reid, maybe Sean McVay, the list is really small of who I'm taking as a head coach over McDermott right now. Outside of that, getting a coordinator that hasn't head coached, getting a young guy from college, one of these next up-and-coming minds. If you're going to replace McDermott with an unknown quantity like that, you better be right. The depths that this organization will fall to if they fire McDermott, who I believe is now the most winningest coach in Bills history, who's gotten you, 5 straight division titles, pretty much winning at least one playoff game every year. If you're going to replace that guy with an unknown quantity, you better be right. And I see a lot of people talking about McDermott wasting Josh Allen's prime, all that stuff that's out there. And I can understand that. I can vibe with that. I don't want to see Josh Allen's best years wasted either. That being said, you make a switch at head coach and you hired the wrong guy, and now you have another 3 years of wasting Allen's career, and then you got to hire the next guy and hope he's the right guy. You can waste 6, 7 years real easy going the other way and with way worse results. So for me, I'm still waiting for somebody to tell me. I'm still waiting for somebody that is of the fire Sean McDermott train to tell me who the replacement is that feels good. And one of the biggest ones I see out there is Ben Johnson from Detroit. And I mean, he's done great things with Detroit's offense. He also has been talked about as, a potential head coach candidate for a couple of years now. And maybe he's just waiting for the perfect opportunity. I don't think we see that happen a ton when coaches are, in consideration for head coaching spots. It's because they don't, there's 32 of those jobs in the whole world. You kind of take your opportunity when you can. And beyond that, just hearing him talk in the off seasons, I don't get the vibes from him that he's all that interested in being a head coach. I could be wrong there. I don't know. I think he's really good at play calling and coordinating, and he's really enjoying what he's doing and having a lot of success in Detroit. Now, I'm sure he'll take a head coaching job at some point if his success continues, but I don't know, a guy that kind of seems wishy-washy about even wanting the position. I don't know if that's I, I don't know if that's a better option than McDermott. I I don't know. I think McDermott is a very good coach in the NFL with his flaws, but he's also the type of coach that is going to take a loss like this, and the team's going to come out better on the other side for it. Now, can they do enough to clean everything up to, go into the playoffs and win it all? We'll see. We'll have to see how the season plays out. But what I do know is that in a team where the Bills are supposed to be retooling and, resetting the deck to get ready for the second half of Josh Allen's career, we're sitting at 10-3. We're getting ready for the playoffs. We have huge game coming up against the Lions in week 15. And, the one seed is still theoretically attainable. The 2 seed's still out there. And in a year that was supposed to be, lowered expectations, maybe the Bills don't even make the playoffs. We're going to be there. We're going to have a chance. And for whatever anybody wants to say about this team, around Josh Allen not being ready and the retooling and blah, 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 we saw it against the Rams. Josh Allen will throw this entire team on his back and give you a chance to win every game. So that's it for me. Just kind of, I'm not riding too high with the wins. I'm not getting too low on this loss. I'm enjoying where we're at this season. I had them at 11 wins, I believe, before the season started. So they're going to beat my expectations for the seasons. We're going to be in the playoffs. We're going to have a chance to do it all. So enjoy the rest of the year. Huge game coming up against Detroit. We'll be back next week to break down that game. Like I said, apologies for the scheduling delays this week. Should be in the clear now, so we should be kind of back to normal. But, just in case something goes sideways, make sure you're subscribed to the show so you never miss an episode. Kindly ask that you like, share, tell a friend about the show if you're enjoying it. Every little bit does help us keep bringing the show out every week. I thank you for joining me on this week's episode. And like I said, next week we'll be breaking down the Detroit game. Hopefully we got a really fun, big win to talk about. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see you next week. As always, go Bills.